I kept on drinking. Several days later, I passed out in the ship ahoy after drinking tequila for 8 hours steadily. Some friends carried me home. Next morning, I had the worst hangover of my life. I began vomiting at 10-minute intervals until I brought up green bile. Then old Ike was around. "You gotta quit drinking, Bill. You're getting crazy." I had never been so sick. Nausea racked my body like a convulsion. Old Ike was holding me up as I vomited a few spoonfuls of bile into the toilet. He put an arm around my shoulder and hugged me and helped me back to bed. About 5 in the afternoon, I stopped vomiting and managed to keep a bottle of grape juice and a glass of milk down. "It stinks like piss in here," I said. "One of them cats must have pissed under the bed." Ike began sniffing around the bed. No, nothing there. He sniffed some more near the head of the bed where I was lying propped up on pillows. "Bill, it's you smells like piss." "Huh?" I began smelling my hands with mounting horror as if I was discovering leprosy. "Good Lord," I said, my stomach cold with fear. "I got uremic poisoning. Ike, go out and get me a croaker." "Okay, Bill, I'll get you one right away. And don't come back with one of them 5-peso script-writing bums." "Okay, Bill." I lay there trying to control the fear. I did not know much about uremic poisoning. A woman I'd known slightly in Texas had died of it after drinking a bottle of beer every hour, night and day, for 2 weeks. Rollins had told me about it. She swelled up and turned sort of black and went into convulsions and died. The whole house smelled like piss. I relaxed, trying to tune in on my viscera and find out what the score was. I did not feel death or indication of grave illness. I felt tired, battered, languid. I lay there with my eyes closed in the darkening room. Old Ike came in with the doctor and turned on the light. The doctor sniffed and smiled and nodded. He had a round, smiling Oriental face. He made a quick examination and asked if I could urinate. Then, turning to Ike, he asked if I was subject to fits. Ike spoke in his halting Spanish, looking for each word. "Este señor huele muy malo y quiere saber por qué." This man smells very bad and he wants to know why. The doctor explained it was an incipient uremia, but the danger was now past. I would have to stop drinking for a month. The doctor picked up an empty tequila bottle. "One more of these and you were dead." He was putting away his instruments. He wrote out a prescription for an anti-acid preparation to take every few hours, shook hands with me and Ike, and left. Next day I had the chucks and ate everything in sight. I stayed in bed 3 days. The metabolic setup of alcoholism had ceased operating. When I started drinking again, I drank normally and never before the late afternoon. I stayed off the junk. When I jumped bail and left the States, the heat on junk already looked like something new and special. Initial symptoms of nationwide hysteria were clear. Louisiana passed a law making it a crime to be a drug addict. Since no place or time is specified and the term addict is not clearly defined, no proof is necessary or even relevant under a law so formulated. No proof and consequently no trial. This is police state legislation, penalizing a state of being. Other states were emulating Louisiana. I saw my chance of escaping conviction dwindle daily as the anti-junk feeling mounted to a paranoid obsession, like anti-Semitism under the Nazis. So I decided to jump bail and live permanently outside the United States. Refugee hipsters trickled down into Mexico. 6 months for needle marks under the vague attic law in California. 8 years for a dropper in Washington. 2 to 10 for selling in New York. A group of young hipsters drop by my place every day to smoke weed. No zoot-suiters, the hipster has gone underground. I learned the new hipster vocabulary. Pot for weed, twisted for busted. Cool and all-purpose word indicating anything you like or any situation that is not hot with the law. Conversely, anything you don't like is uncool. From listening to these characters, I got a picture of the situation in the U.S. A state of complete chaos where you never know who is who or where you stand. Peyote is a new kick in the States. It isn't under the Harrison Act, and you can buy it from herb dealers through the mail. I never tried peyote, and I asked Johnny White if he could score for peyote in Mexico. He said yes. A herb dealer here sells it. He invited all of us to come to his place and eat peyote with him. You can come along if you like. I want to see if he has anything I can take back to the States and sell there. Why not take back peyote? Doesn't keep. It rots or dries up in a few days and loses its kick. We went to the herb dealer's house, and he brought out a bowl of peyote, a grater, and a pot of tea. Peyote is a small cactus, and only the top part that appears above the ground is eaten. This is called a button. The buttons are prepared by peeling off the bark and fuzz and running the button through a grater until it looks like avocado salad. 4 buttons is the average dose for a beginner. We washed down the peyote with tea. I came near gagging on it several times. Finally, I got it all down and sat there waiting for something to happen. Peyote high is something like a Benzedrine high. You can't sleep and your pupils are dilated. Everything looks like a peyote plant. I was driving in the car and Johnny said, "Look at the bank along the road. It looks like a peyote plant." I turned around to look and was thinking, what a damn silly idea. People can talk themselves into anything. But it did look like a peyote plant. Everything I saw looked like a peyote plant. Our faces swelled under the eyes and our lips got thicker through some glandular action of the drug. We actually looked like Indians. The others claimed they felt primitive and were laying around on the grass and acting the way they figured Indians act. I didn't feel any different from ordinary, except high like on Benny. The young hipsters seemed lacking in energy and spontaneous enjoyment of life. The mention of pot or junk will galvanize them like a shot of coke. They jump around and say, "Too much. Man, let's pick up. Let's get loaded." But after a shot, they slump into a chair like a resigned baby waiting for life to bring the bottle again. I found that their interests were very limited. Bill Gaines threw in the towel and moved to Mexico. I met him at the airport. He was loaded on H and goofballs. His pants were spotted with blood where he had been fixing on the plane with a safety pin. You make a hole with a pin and put the dropper over, not in the hole, and the solution goes right in. With this method, you don't need a needle, but it takes an old-time junkie to make it work. You have to use exactly the right degree of pressure feeding in the solution. I tried it once, and the junk squirted out to the side, and I lost it all. But when Gaines made a hole in his flesh, the hole stayed open waiting for junk. Bill was an old-timer. He knew everybody in the business. He had an excellent reputation, and he could score as long as anyone sold junk. I figured the situation must be desperate when Bill packed in and left the States. "Sure, I can score," he told me, "but if I stay in the States, I'll wind up doing about 10 years. I took a shot with him, and the what happened to so-and-so routine set in. Old Bart died on the island. Louis the bellhop went wrong. Tony and Nick went wrong. Herman didn't make parole. The Gimp got 5 to 10. Marvin the waiter died from an overdose." "What about Roy?" I asked. "Didn't you hear about him? He went wrong and hanged himself in the Tombs." Roy had always taken an intolerant and puritanical view of pigeons. "I don't see how a pigeon can live with himself," he said to me once. I asked Bill about child addicts. He nodded and smiled a sly, gloating smile. "Yes, Lexington is full of young kids now." At this time I was not on junk, but I was a long way from being clear in the event of an unforeseen shake. There was always some weed around, and people were using my place as a shooting gallery. I was taking chances and not making 1 centavo. I decided it was about time to move out from under and head south. When you give up junk, you give up a way of life. I've seen junkies kick and hit the lush and wind up dead in a few years. Suicide is frequent among ex-junkies. Why does a junkie quit junk of his own will? You never know the answer to that question. No conscious tabulation of the disadvantages and horrors of junk gives you the emotional drive to kick. The decision to quit junk is a cellular decision, and once you've decided to quit, you cannot go back to junk permanently, any more than you could stay away from it before. Like a man who's been away a long time, you see things different when you return from junk. I read about a drug called yahe used by Indians in the headwaters of the Amazon. Yahe is supposed to increase telepathic sensitivity. A Colombian scientist isolated from yahe a drug he called telepathy. I know from my own experience that telepathy is a fact. I have no interest in proving telepathy or anything to anybody. But I do want usable knowledge of telepathy. What I look for in any relationship is contact on the nonverbal level of intuition and feeling. That is telepathic contact. Apparently, I'm not the only one interested in yahe. The Russians are using the drug in experiments on slave labor. They want to induce states of automatic obedience and literal thought control. The basic con. No build-up, no routine, just move in on someone's psyche and give orders. The deal is certain to backfire, because telepathy is not in itself a one-way setup, or a setup of sender and receiver at all. I decided to go down to Columbia and score for Yahé. Bill Gaines is squared away with old Ike. My wife and I are separated. I'm ready to move on south and look for the uncut kick that opens out instead of narrowing down like junk. Kick is seeing things from a special angle. Kick is momentary freedom from the claims of the aging, cautious, nagging, frightened flesh. Maybe I will find in Yahé what I was looking for in junk and weed and coke. Yahé may be the final fix.